A seat left empty, the G8 becomes the G7. The year was 2014, global tensions were high. Russia, once a participant in the prestigious Group of Eight, found itself ousted. The reason? The annexation of Crimea. This event marked a turning point, transforming the G8 into the G7. It underscored the G7's commitment to democratic values and territorial integrity. The West stood united, Russia stood isolated. The G7, however, is more than just a reaction to geopolitical crises. It represents a forum for the world's leading economies. These nations gather annually. They discuss pressing global challenges. They seek consensus. They strive for collective action. But the G7's effectiveness in a changing world is increasingly debated. The G7's history is one of both cooperation and controversy. Its future remains uncertain. As global power dynamics shift, the G7 must adapt to stay relevant. It must address criticisms. It must demonstrate its value in a multipolar world. The G7 story is far from over. It is a story still being written. A legacy of collaboration, the origins of the G7. The G7's roots lie in the aftermath of World War II. The world was rebuilding. Economic cooperation was paramount. In 1975, 6 nations came together: France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. They formed the Group of Six. Their goal was simple: to stabilize the global economy. The G6 quickly proved its worth. It tackled issues like currency fluctuations and oil shocks. Its success led to the inclusion of Canada in 1976. The G7 was born. Over the decades, the G7's agenda expanded. It addressed issues beyond economics. Climate change, global health, and terrorism became key concerns. The G7 became a symbol of Western unity and leadership. It provided a platform for dialogue and coordination. Its decisions had global implications. But the G7 also faced criticism. Developing countries felt excluded. They argued the G7 did not adequately represent their interests. Guiding principles, the foundation of the Group of Seven. The G7 operates on a set of shared principles. These principles underpin its actions and decisions. Democracy is paramount. The rule of law is essential. Respect for human rights is non-negotiable. These values form the bedrock of the G7's identity. Free markets and open trade are also central to the G7's ethos. The group believes in the power of economic freedom. It promotes trade liberalization and investment. It strives to create a level playing field for businesses worldwide. Sustainability is another core principle. The G7 recognizes the urgency of climate change. It advocates for environmental protection and responsible development. It seeks to balance economic growth with ecological responsibility. These principles guide the G7's engagement with the world. They shape its priorities and influence its decisions. An exclusive club membership criteria and current members. The G7 is an exclusive group. Membership is by invitation only. There are no formal criteria, but certain factors are considered. Economic size is paramount. Political stability is essential. A commitment to democratic values is non-negotiable. The current members are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These countries represent some of the world's largest economies. They are major players on the global stage. Their decisions have far-reaching consequences. The G7's exclusivity has drawn criticism. Critics argue that it is undemocratic and unrepresentative. They point to the rising influence of emerging economies. They call for a more inclusive forum for global governance. The G7, however, maintains that its current format is effective. Shaping global markets. The G7's economic influence is both profound and pervasive. The G7 wields significant economic power as its member states account for a substantial portion of global GDP. They are major players in international trade and finance, and their policies have a ripple effect across the world. The G7's economic influence is, quite simply, undeniable. By using its economic clout to shape global markets, the G7 coordinates monetary policy to stabilize exchange rates, promotes fiscal responsibility to ensure sustainable growth, and tackles issues like tax evasion and financial regulation. The G7's actions can make or break markets. Its decisions impact investor confidence, currency valuations, and global trade flows. The G7's economic pronouncements are closely watched by businesses and governments alike, providing signals about the direction of the global economy and influencing investment decisions and policy choices worldwide. Trade and interdependence. The G7's role in global commerce is pivotal. The G7 is a staunch advocate for free trade, believing that open markets promote economic growth and prosperity. It works diligently to reduce trade barriers and create a level playing field for businesses. The G7 promotes trade liberalization through various channels, negotiating trade agreements to reduce tariffs and other barriers, providing financial assistance to developing countries to help them integrate into the global trading system, and advocating for fair and transparent trade rules. However, the G7's commitment to free trade is not without its critics. Some argue that it has led to job losses in developed countries, while others contend that it has exacerbated inequality between rich and poor nations. Despite these criticisms, the G7 maintains that free trade, when done fairly, benefits all. Beyond economics, the G7's political and social impact extends far and wide. It is not only a powerful economic entity, but also a potent political forum. It addresses a wide range of global challenges, from climate change to terrorism, seeking to find collective solutions. Its political and social impact is substantial. The G7 uses its platform to promote democracy and human rights, condemn authoritarianism, and support democratic movements worldwide. It provides aid to countries in need, and tackles issues like poverty, disease, and gender inequality. The G7's voice carries weight, and its pronouncements on political and social issues can influence global opinion. They can put pressure on governments to address human rights abuses and mobilize resources for humanitarian assistance. The G7's role in shaping the global agenda is undeniable. Despite its influence, the G7 is not without its critics. Controversies and criticisms have plagued the group for years. One major criticism is its lack of representativeness. Critics argue that the G7 does not reflect the realities of a multipolar world. They point to the rising economic and political clout of emerging economies. They call for a more inclusive forum for global governance. Another criticism is the G7's perceived hypocrisy. Critics accuse the group of double standards. They point to instances where G7 members have violated the very principles they claim to uphold. The G7's handling of issues like climate change and global inequality has also drawn fire. Critics argue that the group's actions have not matched its rhetoric. They call for more concrete measures to address these pressing challenges. These controversies and criticisms have tarnished the G7's image. The rise of emerging economies has challenged the G7's dominance. New players have emerged on the global stage. The G20 and BRICS are prime examples. The G20 includes 19 countries plus the European Union. It represents a broader range of economies than the G7. The G20's mandate is to promote global financial stability and economic growth. It has become an important forum for dialogue and cooperation on economic issues. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These emerging economies have experienced rapid growth in recent decades. They have become major players in global trade and investment. BRICS aims to promote cooperation among its members and challenge the existing global order. The emergence of the G20 and BRICS reflects the shifting balance of power in the world. It poses a challenge to the G7's traditional role. Recent events have highlighted the challenges facing the G7. The planned seizure of Russian assets following the Ukraine conflict has sparked debate. Some members support the move. They argue that it holds Russia accountable for its actions. Others are hesitant. They worry about the legal ramifications and potential for escalation. This disagreement underscores the difficulties of maintaining unity within the G7. It also raises questions about the group's ability to act decisively in times of crisis. The G7's response to the Ukraine crisis will have lasting implications. It will shape the group's relationship with Russia. It will influence the future of global security. It will test the G7's ability to navigate a complex and uncertain world. The stakes are high. The world is watching. The G7 stands at a crossroads. The world is changing rapidly. Global power dynamics are shifting. New challenges are emerging. The G7 must adapt to remain relevant. Its future depends on its ability to address its shortcomings and seize new opportunities. One key challenge is to become more inclusive. The G7 must find ways to engage with emerging economies. It must broaden its representation to reflect the realities of a multipolar world. Another challenge is to restore trust. The G7 must address criticisms of hypocrisy and double standards. It must demonstrate its commitment to its own principles. The G7 must also become more effective. It must translate its words into action. It must deliver concrete solutions to global challenges. The G7's future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the group must evolve to remain a force for good in the world.